Well, hello to everybody.
Okay.
We now have 85 participants and many more are coming in.
Beautiful.
I want to introduce myself. I am Hilary Helstein, the director of the Los Angeles Jewish Film Festival. I want to welcome everybody to this webinar for a picture of his life. I'm honored to be introducing this panel discussion today. I think we have some friends here from the Tampa Jewish Film Festival as well. And I saw a few names that came in also from the Vancouver Jewish Film Festival. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. I hope that our audience has had a chance to watch this extraordinary film. And if you haven't, you will still have a chance to watch it today after the inspiring discussion anytime on the Picture of His Life streaming platform. Or at least for the people who came in through the LA Jewish Film Festival, you can go to our website homepage and access the link directly there. As you know, Picture of His Life is the story of Amos Nachoum, one of the greatest underwater photographers of all time, and his quest to capture in photographs underwater the most feared predator in the tundra, the polar bear. Co-directors Dani Menkin and Yonatan Nir, who previously created the 2016 award-winning documentary Dolphin Boy, which many of you had seen through the LA Jewish Film Festival, reunited to create this special film that explores the powerful relationship between man and nature, father and son, and violence and peace. Today, we're honored to have participating on the panel, Amos himself. He will be accompanied by co-director Dani Menkin, underwater cinematographer Adam Ravetch, and Ori Eisen and Nancy Spielberg, two extraordinary executive producers. We also have with us Christopher Gubisch and Oded Horowitz, who is the distributor. Christopher is the amazing, talented composer of the film. Ori is going to moderate the Q&A. So I want to welcome you all. And
let's not forget Yoni is asleep in Israel.
Yoni is asleep, yes, because it is, what time is it in Israel right now? 10 hours ahead.
10 hours ahead from California.
Okay, so I want to know if I can just pose two questions to all of you, and then Ori, I will let you take it away. My first question is, when did you begin working on the film? How did you all come to know each other? When did you know, Dani, that you wanted to make a film about Amos? That's question number one. And question number two, how did you bring on your producers? And to the producers, what was your role in making of the film?
Yes, I'll take the question number one. Like about 15 years ago, I made a film called 39 Pounds of Love, which I had the honor also to work with Christopher Gubisch on the music. And the movie was very successful, and I was known to be the guy that is doing road trip films. And I was approached by a studio in Israel to make the story of Amos, and that's how I met with Yonatan. Yonatan already worked with Amos, he was his assistant, and we wanted to make this big movie, bring it into life, and it was just impossible. We didn't have the budget, we didn't know how to do it. We knew Amos has this incredible dream, and we wanted to go all the way with his dream to capture the picture of his life, which means the polar bear underwater. And then at some point, Yonatan and I spoke, and I asked him, don't you have another story, maybe about dolphins in Israel? And he said, I actually do. And that's how Dolphin Boy came to life. And Dolphin Boy was so successful. We sold it so many places in the world. And when we finished it, we saw that we could make a movie together and still stand each other, which is unbelievable. And we said, you remember our first story was Amos. What's going on with this? Let's see, maybe now we can do it. And Barack Obama was the president. So we said, yes, we can. We knew that no, we could not. It was very tough. And we brought with us Nancy Spielberg, which I had the honor to work with the movie On the Map, and Ori Eisen, which I also had the honor of working with On the Map. So we had to have two incredible executive producers to help us bring it to life We went to the Arctic thanks to Adam Ravetch, who is with us here. And we were 4 Jews in the Arctic, which then we thought we should call the movie Jews, just because of Jaws. And Nancy will talk about Jaws very soon. And I think she even will reveal to you a very special shirt that she has from Jaws. But that's to answer your both questions. That's how it is. And we're unbelievably thrilled that we have done it in a non-conventional way. And we're releasing the movie in a non-conventional way through pictureofhislife.com. So if anyone wants to see the film or wants your friends to see the film, this is the movie theater of 2020. This unbelievable year, 2020. That's the movie theater, pictureofhislife.com, and that's how people are watching our movie. So that's the story for how did we bring it all together.
That's
so
terrific.
I'll just say a little piece. First of all, I see you've got Tampa Jewish Film Festival, you've got Vancouver, you've got Dallas, which is so wonderful that we have people from so many festivals here, Hilary, on this chat. So that's great. After working with Dani and Ori, when you know you have a winning team, you want to play more with your little friends, you know? So when Dani started to tell us about Amos's story, and of course, and we're all beyond animal lovers as well and care about our world, it was a no-brainer. You know, I make the joke, and you guys have probably heard it before, that, you know, after Jaws, the great white shark got a very bad reputation. So as the only Spielberg in the room right now, I sometimes offer up a small apology, though I am wearing, this is the cast and crew t-shirt, 45-year-old t-shirt that I'm wearing, and now I'll cover it up almost.
That's good. Ori, how did you get involved with this motley crew?
You know, if I'll tell the truth, people will think it's a joke, so try not to laugh. But here I am talking to Dani and Jonathan, and they tell me about this guy who tried 10 years before to dive with a polar bear, and he almost lost his life. And I said, and he wants to do it again? And they said, yeah, he's that crazy. I'm like, I'm in. It was literally one of those scenes of like, wow, this is just insane. And when we start our Q&A later, I'm going to ask Adam the question I love asking him. I know why Amos would dive into the water after these things, but he dives right after him. What makes him do it is what I wonder, because all of us would rather stay on the boat.
All right, Ori, go for it. Go do your Q&A. I'd love to hear your questions.
All right. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Dina, who just wrote that she watched the documentary today and thought it was extraordinary. So thank you. We'll take it from the top for people who just watched the movie. Let's talk about how long it takes to make a movie like this. For people who just see the end version, you just don't know. Did it take a year, 5 years, 2 months? So I'll start with Amos. Tell us, when was the first time that the word Amos and the movie came together? When did you start working on this until it was released?
After the first, well, first of all, it is wonderful to see all of you, but especially in this case, some people we have not seen before, which is Adam, Chris Gubisch, and of course also Oded. So that's wonderful conglomerate group of people that participate and help to make it happen. After the first time that I did dive with the polar bear, it was a failure, unfortunately, but survival for me. It was an experience that I knew I could do it better, but I had to find a team to do it. When Yoni, eventually after the war in Lebanon, he got wounded, and I heard about it. I already know Yoni before. I contacted him and invited him to join me on a trip to Sri Lanka to be his assistant and to get him back into the mode of inspiration and creativity and move away from the war, what I did, how I dealt with my post-trauma. And during the time we were together, he was telling me about the movie that he was making with Dani about the dolphin. And I told him that is my dream. I wanted to go back to do the polar bear, and I want to do it with selected team of people differently than I've done in the first time, but my selection of people. And that's how it came about. And then Yoni took it very seriously and started exploring that. And before he made the Dolphin Boy, he met with Dani, and then the conversation started going from that point on. But it was Yoni who took my message and create a forest out of it, or make the creation together with Dani.
How many years ago do you think, Amos?
That is 10 years by now.
10 years. Dani, from your perspective, how long did it take to make this movie?
Too long, forever. It was just unbelievable. You think you're going to finish a movie in a year. You always say, oh, we're almost there. We're almost there. I mean, I think being a filmmaker or film director is like Moshe Rabbeinu, and you always think you're in the promised land, and it's just another step and another step. But I will say that, I work with unbelievable partners. I mean, it's not only Yuri and Nancy, but Yoni, Amos, Adam, we all pushed. And it's almost like giving birth, but you're not the only mother. So many people are pushing through to make it happen. And I came from a filmmaker that, as you know, and you've seen on the map, and you will see later on in the future, I love to be in basketball courts, not in the Arctic by polar bears. And that was the big difference for me. It was suddenly some place that I've never seen, and a place that I will probably never see again in my life. And if you've seen that pilot, that plane, you will not take an Uber with this guy, And we had to take 6 planes in order to 6 flights in order to get to where we've been. And Jonathan and I had to go together to look for a bathroom, and there was no bathroom. And that's pretty intimate. That's not, none of those things are, none of those things you learn in film school, So I'm very fortunate. You say you need a pen to write a book, you need an army to make a movie. So I think I had the best army I could ever imagine, with the commander-in-chief, Amos Nachoum, that doesn't see anything in his eyes, just the goal, how to make it happen. And we made it happen.
So I will not quote you that it seems like for Moses, it took 40 years to wander in the desert to get to the promised land. So don't get discouraged if you're a movie maker. Okay, Nancy, here's a question for you. This is not your first rodeo. You've done some movies before. You work with other creators. Tell us about why. Why this story? Why do you think it needs to be told? What was it, the thing that drew you into this story?
Well, I think and many of the film festivals know, because my first film that I produced on my own was Above and Beyond, and I visited many film festivals with it. And, I really search for stories that show connections and show people that have to, they're insurmountable odds, and they've got goals and dreams, and against all odds, they realize those dreams. That was a huge piece. It relates to this as well as it does Above and Beyond, or On the Map, and some of the other ones. And it also had such a personal story of family connection, which I also love. That is what makes a person, is every member of their family. And also looking at the Inuits, at Joe and his son and his grandson, and the relationships there, and the extinction of that type of lifestyle. And so this is a lot about extinction, or the fear of, in losing these creatures that we don't even see. Almost opened this world up to us. So it had all those elements. And as I said, I'm a huge animal lover. Not that I love the great white. I'm not going that far. But everything has a benevolent side, I believe. You just have to find it. So this just sang to me with many of those different aspects. It was a good rodeo.
Okay. Amos, here's the next question for you. You've been, it seems, all over the world. You've taken stills photography and video. In the movie, tell us about the experience. What does it feel like being face to face with this animal? I mean, none of us will do it other than you and Adam. So try to give us that sense. What are we missing?
Well, I must say before continue to contribute great things to Adam. Adam here with us. I had a chance to work with Adam earlier in his career, and he stayed focused throughout all this period and focusing on the Arctic and become an expert of the Arctic. And as mentioned earlier, second time when we went out, I decided to work with a team, the people I choose. And one of them was Yoni because of our similar background in the military and the commitment and the determination and the training that it takes and all to push forward. And Adam was the other person that I trust completely working in the wilderness, especially in the Arctic. So under these circumstances, when you have a team that is such highly motivated or driven to the same purpose or the same goal, was no ego, was just to be able to make it. We all understood the issue of the conservation, the issue of the threat by the polar bear, but also how to do it right. It was Adam's idea to get there with a family of Inuit, which was very critical for the all issues. And here is a compliment again to Dani and Yoni for the editing. They are probably the only one ever put any movie on the Arctic and also highlight the Inuit life and bring the Inuit people into the picture. Many other movies that made in the Arctic by the Inuit, you don't see them. And they hardly get any credit. And Yoni and Dani did incredible job photographing Joe Kalujak, Billy, and Patrick, and the way which how they feed, and the young Leo, how he learn how to hunt. It was just from this aspect. So again, with all of this, to be able to be at the moment in the water with the polar bear, there was nothing else in my mind. I knew I had a very good hand with Adam by my side, and the focus was only behind the camera. The fear, one of the questions always asked about the fear. Yes, trepidation, what happened to me in the past, how to put it in the present. But at the moment I decide, and I knew Adam by my side, to go in the water, there was only one thing. It's like any other mission that you execute, you focus on the mission. And you know that, you know your tools, I knew myself, and how I could execute it. Things could go wrong, naturally. However, it did not. And the difference between risk and success, it is very, very thin. in all business, is very, very thin. And we succeed, and it's contributed greatly to the whole team that worked together to make it happen. And everybody knew that we committed. We did everything possible. We were a very lean team, which is Adam and I, Yoni and Dani on the boat, and of course, the Inuit leading us in and taking us out safely.
So Adam, on the heels of that, you see Amos trying to take these pictures, you're filming. What does it feel like? And you need to unmute yourself. Your microphone is still on mute. Let me see if I can unmute you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I apologize for that. I said I was going to regress just a tiny bit because when I was listening to Nancy describe Jaws, this whole event, getting me to with Amos and in front of a polar bear, I think started when I was a kid. And if I'm not mistaken, Jaws was the movie that coined the blockbuster. And there was the money side of it, but there was also people that lined up around the block. And I lined up 8 times as a kid back in those days. So I have a lot of passion for the great white. It's a scary animal, but at the same time I was drawn to it. And then I met Amos in the mid-1980s when I was part of a scholarship, a marine biology scholarship. And I was really lucky to sort of spend time with various underwater pioneers and a lot of the underwater cinematographers of that time. In fact, one of the people that shot some of the footage from Jaws was a guy named Ron and Valerie Taylor, very, very famous Australian underwater filmmakers, and there's others like people like Stan Waterman and Al Giddings, who all shot in documentary but features underwater. And then I met Amos, and here he was doing this one-of-a-kind underwater still photography, and these were all pioneers that inspired me and drove me to want to do the same thing. And so that led me to eventually, I won't go into the whole story, to the Arctic, and to specializing in underwater, under the ice, and with polar bears. And then Amos and I had known each other for 30 years, and I always admired his work. And like I said, there were a lot of beautiful stills out there, but there's very few people that can get behavior in one moment. You know, something that actually tells us something about the animal we've never known before, and we learn something. He did it with killer whales. You might not know about it, where he has a mother killer whale holding a baby that just recently passed away, and she wouldn't let it go, and she's pushing it through the water. In that moment, okay, when nobody was filming or working with killer whales at that time, Amos was the first to jump in the water, the first to go for it, so that we could expand our knowledge and make a contribution about the natural world. And he's done that his whole career. And when he came to me about polar bears, I just knew that this was going to be such a collaboration and a wonderful project. And if he was going to go in the water, I had to follow him. Somebody had to shoot him. So as long as I had the camera in front of me and I put him in the line of defense, I figured the polar bear would come to him first. Yes. So that was sort of the feeling I had at the time.
You know, the joke, you don't have to be faster than the bear, you have to be faster than Amos.
There you go.
All right. I'm going to ask this team a few more questions, and then in about 7 to 8 minutes, we'll go to the audience questions and field them through. Chris, here's a question for you. Many people don't realize that footage is shot all day long in movie studios, but without the music, it's simply not the same. The same shot with the right music could look like a love scene, and the same shot with some scary movie looks scary. Tell us about the process of seeing the footage and thinking what music would go with it.
That's a great question. Music makes a huge difference. I think I like to think that that's what makes a movie in a lot of ways, not just people talking and things happening. It's a lot of it obviously is listening to the directors and what they're thinking about in terms of the storytelling process, and also what their musical influences are. Dani and I share a deep love of the Beatles, and Dani and Jonathan share a deep love of
Neil Young.
Yes, Neil Young. Thank you. I don't know why I can't remember. And there were a couple Neil Young songs in there. Obviously, the Leonard Cohen song "Anthem" is also it's kind of a hymn. Leonard Cohen is very bluesy, almost gospel based, as is Neil Young. So that's something that very much influenced me. And obviously, there's a lot of cold, sort of icy landscape. So you will also hear a lot of icy background pads, sustained sounds that sort of indicate the atmosphere. But it's, I've tried to steer away from things that were overly scary or terrifying, like say the Jaws theme. You don't want to hear that. These bears aren't evil monsters. And Amos's approach isn't, he's not hunting these things, and he's not running away from them. He's literally just trying to get close to them and take their photograph. So I tried to create some music that was both atmospheric and also had some sort of gospelness to it.
Cool. Oded, here's a question for you. You represent a lot of different movies. Some are Nancy's and other people. Tell us about what made you think, I want to tell this story to them, I want to represent it. How do you make that choice when you see this movie? What goes through your mind?
Usually it's intuition and combined with experience. So I think that when Dani first showed me the film, I was quite surprised and amazed because I was expecting on the map or something like that, and I suddenly saw what seemed like a multi-million National Geographic production, which looks amazing, sounds amazing, and the story, I believe it's just so touching in many ways and to so many people, because the struggle that Amos shows and represents something that, I mean, we don't fight with polar bears in our life, but we fight with our demons, all of us. And I thought that it was in a way simple but very, very deep and touching and beautiful. And why won't people just love it? And I'm glad to see that people do.
Fantastic. All right, one more question, and then we'll start with the audience question. Adam, Amos, and Dani, out of all of us listening here and in the panel, you actually were there. Many people want to know, how did you deal with those giant mosquitoes? Amos, why don't you start?
Well, we had a net. And the net, we just got used to it. Nothing you could do. We could not run away. There was no plane anymore, and there was no place to hide. So we had to just to deal with it. And but it was not there all the time. Interestingly enough, that they put it in a movie, and it was really a point of fun or joy for the audience to see it or to be curious about it. But it was not something that we suffered. And as you saw in the movie also, Adam and I, we had a net that allow us to live with it and to be with it. It is bothersome, but it's part of the experience as you go out of the wilderness.
Dani, same question. How did you deal with the mosquitoes?
You know, they say that a good documentary, you need to be a fly on the wall. But I think they took it a little bit one step too much in this case. And that was not, again, something that we anticipated, and it was quite unusual, you know. And basketball courts where I come from, the arena, you don't have that. And, you know, we were really fish out of water, dolphin out of water, polar bear out of the island, whatever you want to call it. I felt very much at home when I came home.
Adam, same question?
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree here with Amos because it's a lot of suffering with mosquitoes. If you hold your hand,
you suffer a little bit.
a little bit, but if you hold your hand and you don't cover it, and you just let it hang there, it would turn black. There are so many, at times, there's so many mosquitoes, it's the worst. And they don't move fast, but there's just so many of them. But one of the things you can do is there's also, at the same time, these little birds show up. They're called snow buntings, and they love to eat the mosquitoes. So if you can kind of for the evening capture a mosquito, a snow bunting, because inside your tent, there's usually more mosquitoes than outside. You can release him in the tent, let him go around and feed, and then he escapes, and then at least you can get some sleep that night. But I don't know. I've never really gotten used to the mosquitoes.
I don't want to speak for Nancy, but we would rather you go there, and we will just help you from home. All right. Let's get to the audience questions. There's many. I'll try to sift through most of them, and hope some of them were answered already by the time we got here. So, Amos, many people are wondering about the first encounter, not the one that is in the movie, the one that we speak about that happened 10 years ago. Tell us in a few minutes, what did that feel like, look like, and how on earth did you decide to do it again?
Well, as already mentioned, and we have Nancy here, the movie Jaws was one that really, if I can say that, besides Jean Cousteau, was a moving point in my life as a wildlife photographer, and the desire to be a wildlife photographer, and then the movie Jaws. So as a photographer, we have, like in any profession, I believe today, especially today, we need to have a niche, something very unique that make you different than other and make other people attracted or looking at what you do. And you have a style of which how you present yourself or the work you do. So for me, it was the animal behavior. And then we start with the great white. Originally, when I started working in the early 80s, if the movie Jaws was in 74, in 81, 82, I was already going to to Australia, photographing with Rodney Fox, the great white, and I did a mission for Geographic with David Dubelain and Jeannie Clark. And then later on in the early 90s, already in South Africa, and diving there with the great white and out of the cage without protection, don't need protection. And that was the beginning, in a way, to understand that we don't need so much protection. We need to be more, rather than aggressive, we need to be more passive and more patient with the animals to let the animal come close to us and be able to bring the true, authentic behavior of the animal rather than the one that we push to get the picture. So later on, after diving with the great white in open water already in South Africa, I thought I can do also, or I'd like to do, to add more to my collection of images, the one with the polar bear. And then I went myself to the high Arctic. I was there with another company once or twice, and then I learned a little bit more about the field. And when I went the second time by myself, I found some people that wanted to join me to do that. And then we went out and hired a boat, one of the Inuit guide, and we went out to dive with the polar bear. Unfortunately, or to me, fortunately, there were those people that want to join me and take the responsibility, share the financial responsibility. But the diving responsibility or the professionalism was missing. And that's where the click that creates the difficulty, but then also create the idea of how to do it differently. And then when I was supposed to go to the water, two people, myself and one other person. And, to be a bigger subject in the front of the polar bear rather than to be alone. And I went to the water and waiting for the second person to come in. And after a few seconds, 30 seconds or minutes, it did not show up. I'm looking back to my left or to my right. And eventually I had to look back behind me while the polar bear was in front of me. I had to look back and the person was there and he was attached to the boat. The crew was holding him while he's in the water. What happened is, later on I learned, his tank got lost or loose in the BCD and he could not continue diving. They had to lift him out of the water to attach it. And I realized that I'm alone in the water. The boat was moving with the current and the wind, and the polar bear and I carry a camera, almost 30 pounds of weight around my waist. So I will not be fast moving on the surface, but I'll probably be diving faster. And I start diving. It's very important to know, and Adam can confirm it, that physically polar bear not known to be diving very deep. For one, because some people that have been diving with them before claim that polar bear will not go more than 10 meters or 30 feet, but also because of the physical body of the polar bear, which is a lot of fat, and also the fur that when take so much water, it will be very difficult for it to dive very deep. So taking this under consideration, so I thought, well, I can go 10, 15 meters. But also from my experience already working with many wild animals, that is one thing that we have report with few other people in the world of being with them, but it does not mean that the animal read this report or they know what other people observe about them. So there are always take a margin of safety. Learn something that I learned also during the military service in the special forces in Israel. So I said, I'll dive deeper than 30 feet or 10 meters. I'll go to 15, I go to 20 meters. But the polar bear was after me, 20, 25 meters at about 75 feet. I was on 80 feet. And only then he gave up. And that's create the whole drama after this. But that was the foundation of the information that carried on, brought back, and I'm together with all of you guys.
Wow.
We're thankful for that.
Yes, indeed. Thank for each one of you.
Adam, we'll ask you the next question, and Amos can add color. Dina would like to know, it kind of seems strange that the mother polar bear with 2 cubs is not more aggressive, but the single male was. Is there any thoughts you want to share about that? Anything we can enlighten the audience about?
Well, I think it's in keeping with what Amos was just talking about, in that this idea that when you say polar bears all act the same way, I always think animals are just like people. Think that people that live in cities can see it in their pets, that every animal has a different personality. So in regard to a mother and cubs, maybe one time you dive with them and she doesn't leave the surface. Maybe another time you pick another mother and she'll come down. So I think every situation and every animal you have to approach differently. You have to try to read them and really try to understand their personality. Are they aggressive? Or are they curious? Or are they just allowing your presence? And I think that's how I approach it. So in the film, the two animals, the male and the mother and the baby, in my opinion, the approach was similar. And I wasn't thinking in the moment was, oh, this one's going to be a similar, that experience will equal what we'll experience with the mother and the baby. So each one of them, you read before you go in the water, and then you have to sort of trust that you've made a good decision and that good things will happen.
Just like the saying, it's not the average bear, so we have to measure them.
I'd like to add in something very critical that most people will not know. Adam and I waited in the water almost 30 minutes for the polar bear and the family to come over our head. In other words, we saw them coming from one island into the water, and we allowed them to come toward us. Adam and I did not move. We were trading water for 30 minutes in this almost 1 or 2 degree of water temperature, 32 or 34 degree of temperature. And we waited for them to come toward us, and that's what make all the difference. She could move. If she felt uncomfortable protecting her cubs, she could go 5 meters to our right or 10 feet to my left or 10 feet to our right and to Adam right, and will not see them. She'll totally avoid us. And she decided clearly to come over our head, just clearly over our head, not even 1 foot on the side. So fascinating. Is probably because of Adam's wisdom and experience working in the ice, be able to share with me to be patient, just let it happen. And we just, I guess, I believe there's no such thing luck. Luck is preparation meet opportunity. And that's what we did. And that's what, all the respect, again, I must say to Yoni and Dani, that were able to put it all together, and to Adam to be by my side, and to all of you, that would be Oded and Chris, and of course, Ori and Nancy, to be part of this team, to believe that we can make it, and we live up to that. We take this power of this dynamic of energy of so many people, thinking positively, strong, each one on his own profession, bring it to such an extending production.
Wonderful. Dani and Nancy, Veronica is asking if the Canadian government was supportive of the film in either way. Were you in contact with them at all?
There were a few points that we tried. I think even Adam and I were talking about it because Adam is Canadian. But you know what, when we felt like it's the right opportunity to do it, we didn't go to any bureaucracy. We did it like a bunch of Israelis or indie filmmakers doing it. We just said, okay, this is what we have. Let's just go ahead and do it. And that's the way it happened. So we didn't go, but if the Canadian government still wants to support this film, we will be happy to be in touch with them.
The thing is, we do raise money because we create these films as not-for-profits. So a lot of the donors do want tax incentives. We don't always have the same ability with Canadian tax rules. So most of our support was US and Israel based.
Yeah, yeah, and if anyone wants to support what we do, there are a few ways. It's through our website, heyjudeproductions.com. And there is a way to support a non-for-profit, or if you tell your friends to watch Picture of His Life at pictureofhislife.com, this will also support us, and we will be able to do more for our distribution and tell more stories like that.
Very good. Adam and Dani and Amos, Jan is asking about the Inuit village. I don't know if you had time to spend time in the village, because in the movie all we see is your little tent area where you were going to see the bears from. If you were in the Inuit village, how was it like?
Well, I can try to answer that because I spent a lot of time up in the Canadian Arctic. And maybe a reference for the audience, the guests today, is the Canadian Inuit really were living on the land as they'd always have up until around the 1950s and 1960s, solely continuing to move with the seasons and with the animals. And that knowledge in and of itself is unbelievable. It's another thing too that we always talk about, that, you know, it's one thing about being with the animals, but without the knowledge of the Inuit people who have, from living on the land for thousands of years, from growing up on the land just in their lives, none of us would be able to achieve, I would say 90 to 100% of what we achieve in the Arctic. So in the 1960s, the Canadian government collaborated with the Inuit people to bring them on into settlements. So they allowed, you know, they still went to live nomadically in different seasons, but they also provided housing and stores for some supplemental food because they still hunt on the land. And that has developed since the 1960s. And then in 1999, through legal means and through education, because a lot of that first generation of Inuit children that came off the land and were in these towns, they got educated by the government as well. They kind of grew up to be lawyers and leaders of their community, and they formed a brand new territory in Canada. Prior to that, there was just this one territory called the Northwest Territory and Yukon, and then they created a brand new one called Nunavut. Nunavut in Inuktitut means our land, and that allowed them to retain their cultural heritage, their hunting rights, their language, their way of life, but at the same time, take advantages of what all Canadian citizens get to take advantage of, protected by Canadian law, and all the things that go along with being a citizen up in Canada. So they're very modern people, but they also have this incredible knowledge and connection to the land that people like Amos and I were really lucky and fortunate to be in a time when we could work with them and collaborate with their knowledge. In this case, the polar bear, and the best places to go, and even ask their knowledge of what do you think of that animal, going in the water with this animal, because they've spent their entire lives out there, so they know best as well.
Out of curiosity, Amos and Dani and Adam, we see a lot of salmon being cut in the movie and being dried out. Tell us, is it as tasty as it looks?
You want me to keep going, Amos?
I hope they let you try it.
Those fish just really are not salmon. It's a similar species, but it's called Arctic char.
Char, yeah.
And they're
I ate it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because I don't eat meat. So when they cut the caribou, I didn't eat it. So I checked it's kosher, and I checked the flies were not kosher. And
the fish had a little K sign on it, Dani?
Yeah. They come with a K on it, yeah. And the K mean kavod, you know, it's an honor that you are eating us. And it actually was very tasty. Yeah.
Okay. Amos, next question is for you. Dina wants to know, when did you develop the passion to become a photographer, or you were born with it?
I was turned into photography since I was very young. This is probably when I was 12 years old. I found the camera, my father's camera from World War II, that was hidden out on an attic. And then I took it to play, and I noticed because I played with it and I got with the picture, everybody in the neighborhood in a small town in Israel, as people start to ask me questions and were interested and asked me to photograph them. This is how I started. And I took it a little bit later on. Before the army, I started to do journalism in Israel. And then during the service, I photographed, of course. And then besides holding a gun in one hand, I took a camera with me on some of the operation. And then it became almost like something I did immediately after the service. But because of the war, I decided after the war to go to do something exactly opposite. And I did not know why, really. Only later on, I discovered about myself the post-trauma, and I decided to do fashion photography. So can you imagine just getting out of the war with all my skill in the time as a photographer, on war photography, I went into fashion photography. And then, both of them did not satisfy me, and I did not find the curiosity. I was not curious about it anymore. It gave me the money perhaps, but I did not grow within myself. And that's why I went into the wilderness or into the water in the Red Sea. And from there on is evolved into more and more. I started in the beginning photographing the reef, but then seeing the damage we caused to the reef, I decided to work only in blue water, and then decide to work only with animal and bring images that show the authentic behavior of the animal. And that was my niche that led me till today, and together with all of you guys.
Okay, Nancy, the next question is for you from David Scher at TBJ Film Festival. He proudly says that last year they closed with Who Will Write Our History, and this year with Picture of His Life. You know what he's asking, right? What's next?
Well, we are in production and mini post-production on a film that I'm doing with Roberta Grossman, who did Who Will Write Our History, and Laura Bialis, who did Rock in the Red Zone and the Refuseniks. And it's a film called Vishniac, about Roman Vishniac, who was really an incredible, difficult, complex character, photographer. Which, look at, I'm doing another photography film. But so that, and then Dani, we're working with Dani. We're in development with a couple of other films. There's a lot to be done, but Vishniac will be the next thing in that side that will hit the festivals. With Dani, we also have OC, and OC had started with some festivals, then we all got hit with this COVID. So when life starts to return to being able to hug each other, we hope to bring OC to the theaters, to the warm bodies, so we can actually share it together in the old-fashioned way.
Okay. Dani, Marc is asking, how did we get the aerial tracking shots over that craggy land? Did you use a helicopter? Did you use drones? How did you get these shots?
Okay, so all the credit go to this gentleman right here, Adam Ravetch. I was really a cheerleader in this case because I love the shot and it was beautiful. But Adam, I would let you elaborate on this because it was, for me, it was really magical. The fact that as a very small crew, we could have brought that quality. And a lot of credit goes to Jonathan that did a lot of cinematography and co-directed the movie with me. And of course, to Adam Ravetch. Adam, about the aerial.
Thank you. Well, the aerials were done with drones. I mean, drones have changed natural history filmmaking, where you know, a line item in a movie budget in the old days, maybe it was, you know, it was $2,000 an hour for a helicopter and fuel. So if you could muster up somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000, that maybe gives you 2 days, and you have to wait for the sun. And what I love about drones, in the case of this movie, we're following Amos, the character. So whatever he's doing in the moment that Yoni or might have been shooting, let's say from the boat, or let's even say that I was underwater shooting, we could then in literally a minute or two have the drone ready, launch it, and then you get the real moment of what's happening, what Amos is doing. Or if you have a polar bear character, you can follow that same animal. And it's a much richer sequence when you're working with all the different areas, all the various coverage, aerial, underwater, surface. And when you put that together, it can be sort of a very dramatic and rich, and it translates well in the emotional impact of the film. So drones are a fantastic tool.
You know, there was a moment that we wanted a shot of Amos in the water from the aerial, and Amos was shouting to us and saying, "Remember, guys, the water in the Arctic are cold." You know.
Well, the funny part about that is one thing, Amos was in the water, it was cold. I was trying to shoot some aerials, and then we were standing, Yoni and I were standing on a piece of real estate, a rock, that when we began shooting the aerial, I would say it was about the size of a football field. And literally in 20 minutes, the tide had come up, and we both were not in dry suits. So we were just standing there as the tide was about to consume us. And so we had to get the shot. Amos was like, "I am hypothermic here. I got to get out of the water." and the tide was coming up, and we needed the boat to come over before we got we're going to be underwater with the drone. So there was a lot going on that day. Tide, Amos, drone. But
it is one thing to be in the water for half an hour waiting for the polar bear in the cold water. But when you don't have any animal around you, just the drone above my head, it was boring. It was.
I have a quick question. How much footage did you shoot overall, and were there any shots that you just couldn't get? And how did you make up for that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, average documentary film is an hour footage to 1 minute in the movie. So we have shot for a course of 10 years, but there is a moment that you are shaping the script and you know what you want to tell. And we wanted not only to capture Amos taking the picture of his life, we wanted to also tell the story of Amos and the picture of his life. So there were a lot of moments that we were focusing on the relationship between Amos and his father, and the story of the army. So there were many, many years of documentation until we felt we have it right. And actually, just when we were in the Arctic, we felt like Amos was. I mentioned that I was a fish out of water, and I believe Jonathan was also a fish out of water, but Amos was really in his element. And that's where emotions started to come up. And he said, look at this, look at this, how raw it is, how pure it is. And he started to also talk about the trauma and about the army. And for us, it was very important to show how somebody that was a soldier for the Israeli army became a soldier for Mother Nature.
Thank you, Dani.
As for people who have seen the movie, there's definitely a few storylines: Amos and his father, Amos and the bear, the PTSD. All those things are coming together very harmoniously. I would like to ask Amos, to the extent you feel comfortable, because many people are asking me this privately, not in the public chat. What can you tell us about the relationship with your father? Did it change at all as a result of this movie, or to the extent you're comfortable?
It is not difficult, but it is something that I had to resolve that earlier in my life. In the mid-30s, I also resolved the fact that my father will not recognize what I do or support what I do. And I looked for the support or for acknowledgement, if you want to call it, as all of us as people needed, kids and adults. I looked for the acknowledgement, and I received that from Mother Nature. I receive it from the wildlife. I receive it from people who joined my trip. I was leading expedition around the world, and people gravitate around what I do and keep me moving successfully economically. So that is the acknowledgement. I had a very tough relationship with my father. I did not speak with him for many years. He did not accept the fact that I went to the service to be in the special forces. But I did what I wanted to do, and it was a relation. And I understood that because he came from an era which was very different. And I grew in an environment was very different for him, and he did not change with time easily. And as a kid, I had much easier time or ability to move along with the new challenges or the new offering that I had in Israel at the time, where my father came, or his family came from Libya, running away from the Nazis, and from and of course from the all of the, not the Holocaust yet, but the Nazis was running after them. My mother lost two of her sisters. So all of this pain came with them to Israel. I had a chance growing there, but I've seen so many other things, opportunities, and I was gravitated around them rather through the misery to difficulty that they have been. And it's more difficult for him to relate to that. For me, not. He did not acknowledge me, but I guess because the way which how he raised me, I was strong enough to be able to sustain and to say, thank you, Father, for what you did. Although we did not agree many times, but that's what give me the strength to continue until today and be able to share with you and everybody else that really follow your heart, and no matter what difficulty it is, but it is worthwhile because it is the only thing you have by the time you grow up and you share it with the people around you.
Thank you, Amos. That is so kind of you to share that with us, because many people wonder, but no one wants to ask. So I'll ask, and whatever you're comfortable with, you'll answer. So let's stay for a moment on one more tough subject in the movie, and then we'll come up to a little bit more rosy things. Adam, I'm going to ask you this question. Many people are asking, there's a dramatic moment in the movie that I know I've seen all of Dani's films, and there's laughter and moments where you're like, wait, what just happened here? There's a very specific moment in the movie after you encounter the male bear. He's trying to get after you, and then complete darkness for something that looks like forever to the audience. Tell us what happened. What happened in those scary moments?
Well, the one thing about it's kind of like the great white shark thing as well. Predators, especially a polar bear, are capable of eating people. It's just a reality. It's not to put the fear of God into us, but for those of us that work with them, we are part of the food chain. So with the big male bear that was swimming towards Amos, and I will sort of defer to the filmmakers of their decisions to make, to go to black and all that, but this was a big male polar bear, and it, almost already had an experience where he had a near miss. And so all I would say is, in what happened is we are still here. and that's a good thing.
Yes.
Every animal has a personality, don't forget.
Yeah. They're not all your average bear. All right. Amos and Adam, the same question for both of you. What is your favorite all-time animal to photograph?
Go ahead, Adam.
Is there one?
Favorite animal of all time?
Yeah.
I have an affinity towards walrus. I love walrus. And it's probably because the first animal, when I first went to the high Arctic back in 1990, I was going after narwhal, which is the unicorn whale, the whale with the big ivory tusk, the 9-foot long ivory tusk comes out of its jaw, actually. And while I was in the water, my Inuit guide yelled at me. And because a walrus had just popped up, and this was an area where it was deep water, and the normal food source of a walrus is clams. But in this deep water, there were no clam beds. And so the animals here had learned how to hunt seals. They're seal eaters. And so the Inuit guy was yelling at me to get out of the water, because he told me that they can come up behind 900-pound seals, hold them against their will, knock their head off with one swipe of their tusk, and suck their brains out. And so that, more than the polar bear, put the fear of God into me. The idea of getting your brain sucked out is not a great dream to have. And that's where all my fears live, in my dreams. But that allowed me to make a shift. I actually started going after walruses because I realized there weren't many underwater walrus films out there. people hadn't spent a lot of time with them in the water. And I always say that my house, my kids' education, everything I have is because of walruses. So there you go. That's my animal.
Amos, what's your all-time favorite animal to film or to photograph?
My all-time favorite is the next animal, because I've been very lucky to be able to work with many animals in the wilderness and to understand that they are perfectly designed to the environment which they live. We never can, well, don't say never again, but I don't think we can yet do something or create something as amazing as those animals living in their environment. So as a photographer, as a documentary wildlife photographer, my responsibility is to share with you those moments in the water of all the animals that I can in my lifetime. And so there is no favorite, because they are all made by power greater than us. And I'm mainly the messenger for you to be able to share and to bring you the knowledge and the experience and the joy of being there with those animals. I lead expedition, so I take people with me from one animal to the next, sometimes more than once after the same animal, because the behavior is different every single time. And that's how I look at life. I don't have one animal in particular. All of the creatures of the planet, including human, black, white, green, and yellow, are very unique and very special.
So with that, Julie asks two quick questions. What is next for you? What is the next animal? And was this photograph with the bears really the true pinnacle of your career?
It is the pinnacle till today, and tomorrow there will be another animal. I came to a point indeed in my career that I photographed between the orcas and the great white and the anaconda and the Nile croc and the polar bear. How do I take myself from here and do something different or more, perhaps most relation to what I have gathered till now, the experience which I have till now. So I decided to focus from now on mostly on animals that are threatened and endangered. And one of them, or I can mention 2 or 3 of them right now. One of them is the Siberian tiger, hopefully to be able to go there coming January, February. And then another one is the blue whale, the largest animal live on the planet. They're actually modern time dinosaur, because they blue whale could not live during the dinosaur period or era on the planet. But after the dinosaur disappeared, blue whale showed up, and they are larger. They are over 30 meters in length. There is a particular place which is very difficult to get, unfortunately, out of the middle of the Pacific of Costa Rica, called the Costa Rica Dome or the Blue Whale Cafe. And there is constantly hit by wind, but because so much wind, it brings so much food from the deep water to the surface. And there is a particular time of the year when I plan to go there and to be able to photograph the blue whale, the sei whale, and the fin whale, which is the 3 largest animal ever live on the planet. And the last one is animal that only 400 left on the planet. It is the clouded leopard. And there is no picture of clouded leopard from the wild, only in captivity. And they are threatened because they are hunted for their skin or for whatever else other tradition believe in. And I would like to bring some more emotional or authentic images from the wilderness where they live, so to show or to create a legacy for this another wildlife that is quite in danger.
Fantastic. Dani and Nancy, people are wondering, is it difficult to fund a movie like this?
It's difficult to fund just about any movie. It's hard to raise money, period. And though there are certain people, there are people that love the topic and they will be there for you. I had funders that funded above and beyond that were not interested in who will write our history or weren't interested in On the Map or ones, so you sort of have to find out what speaks to your donors and also how we use the films for educational purposes. So that does help, but I think all of us in our different crafts know that it's tough to raise money. And it's going to be a little tougher right now too, because, you know, in general, times are tough. And usually it is the arts that are cut first and suffer. But, you know, when you have a film like Picture of His Life and many of the other ones, you are offering the next generation a textbook. Mostly, like I always say this, kids don't read anymore. So we have to give them knowledge in a way that they will absorb it readily. And this is tasty knowledge right here.
Yeah, I must admit that I have two teenagers, and even if I tell them want to watch a movie, they ask how long is it? That even movies now, it's like, wait, I want to see that. I want to invest my time into it. Dani, here's some nice comments from people who really love the fact that you added the scenes with Jonathan of Amos putting the pictures on the grave of his father. That was a great kind of icing on the cake, of course, with the ending music that, you know, makes every eye in the audience not dry. Tell us about the decision to add that to the end.
I think at the end of the day, the movie had so many elements, and we said that it's a story of generations, it's a story of cultural, it's a story of post-trauma, and a story to go to the ultimate dream picture, and it's a story about the environment. So we knew that there is something that can put everything together. And in many ways for us, the relationship between Amos and his father represented the relationship between us and the polar bear. So when Amos captured the mother and two cubs, as filmmakers and storyteller, we wanted to show that Amos found his family, and that was his family. And as Leonard Cohen said at the end of the film, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And if there is one message that I can bring to the world from this film, I hope this is it. Especially now, where things look terrible from so many reasons, so many angles. There is a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. So I hope whoever got this message and think it's worthwhile, now, or you'll be proud of me. I will say, go to our website, pictureofhislife.com, and please recommend everybody to watch the film. And I hope it will inspire them just as much as it inspired us to make Picture of His Life.
Okay, we'll take a couple more questions and then we'll see if there's any words to wrap it up. I see a repeat question for Adam and Amos about the male bear who attacked you, and clearly that's captured. Would you like to add more details? How did you protect from him harming you? Why didn't he eat you or harm you? Many people are wondering when the male is attempting. Well, what happened there? Like, how did you defend from the catastrophe?
Well, if I take it, Adam, please. From the first experience that happened so long ago, 15 years ago, I learned that I need to be able to dive and to dive fast enough. And also, if you notice in the movie that Adam even said that I acted like I was very young and I jumped to the water so many times, you know, to have a perfect buoyancy control. If anybody in the crowd between us, the people listening to us today, is a diver, they know that buoyancy control is one of the most important elements of being in the water, being safe to myself, to the coral reef, and to the animal, and to everything else. So I have a better control on being in this environment and can maneuver much faster rather than struggle against myself if I'm overweight or too light. So keeping on my buoyancy control, I did not have enough weight on the boat. Adam did not bring enough weight. Adam. So I had to use some of the tools from the boat to put in my pocket, and I jumped 3, 4, 5, 6 times till eventually I got the balance that I wanted. Knowing that if the polar bear will come after me, I'll have to be able just to make a short move and to be able to dive really deep. And that's exactly what happened. when I came toward the polar bear and I saw him, or I was in the water already, but he came over and started to dive toward me, I knew that I need to do, the next thing is to dive deeper. And just by moving myself, by tilting my head down and my leg up, I was able to go dive deeper. Then the polar bear came after, and Adam, luckily enough, and he's skilled photographer or cinematographer to be able to capture it at this moment and to keep it. Interestingly enough, that Yoni in the beginning did not think to add this to the movie. And Adam and I really encouraged the guys, please put it in, because to show that being in the nature, we have to be very thoughtful of how we do it, why we do it, and how to be able to survive in most cases if we can.
Adam, anything you would add to that?
No, just in keeping with what Amos said, I think the fact to have our sort of our safety was to have more air than the bear.
Yes.
If you can outlet, the bear can only hold his breath so long. So if we can go deep enough, that was our escape route, and we had our tank cylinder on our back. So
it sounds like a great tagline for this movie: "Have more air than the bear."
Have more air than the bear. It's a new bumper sticker.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask the last question. It's a three-part question about how big the crew is to make a film like that. How long were you on location? And one question that probably came from somebody who haven't watched the movie, where they asked, did you have to carry a weapon? And I can answer that. Yes. These bears will sneak up on you. They might be big, but they walk very, very quietly. So tell us about, Dani, the size crew you needed, the different parts of the movie, and how long have you been on location?
Yeah, we were 4 Jewish people, and Adam, Amos, Jonathan, and I, together with the Inuit family that showed us and paved us the way to go. We could not, we would have ideally want to be larger crew, but we couldn't because of budget and the condition. And we had like a week to be there, about 5 days in the Bearland, but it was about a week in the Arctic, which looked and felt to us like a month, because remember, summer in the Arctic, it's always daylight. So it was long, but we're back, we're safe and sound, and I can't thank everyone here enough for helping Jonathan and I realize our dream, realize Amos' dream, and rejoining with you, Ori, Nancy, Chris Gubisch, Oded, really Adam, Amos, everyone here. I'm thrilled and I'm happy. And people always say, oh, what? There are some good things happening with all this pandemic. One of them is that we're able now to show it worldwide, and I hope this movie will be shown to as many as possible, and it will inspire as many as possible, because it definitely inspired us. As you know, it's not a moneymaker. It's really something that you're doing out of love, and that's why we've done it.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to speak for a minute to see if anybody in the audience has a really burning question that was not answered yet, and then we'll begin wrapping up. I know it's 5:15 here and it's 8:15 on the East Coast. So we'll begin wrapping this up. So if you have an important question that you really want to know that was not answered yet, this is the time, and we'll take 1 or 2 more and wrap this up.
I have a question. I want to know. You've had many challenges on the shoot, and it went on for a 10-year period. Can each one of you talk about what was the biggest challenge to you?
The challenge for me was to keep the 2 young men, Adam and Yoni and Dani, believing that we can succeed despite the difficulty we had with the weather and finding the animals. And that was perhaps the most difficult element. Adam had many years experience working there. I had experience working in the wilderness, many places. And I always believe that as you heard in the movie, Mother Nature will always provide, and many times more than what we expect. We did not expect to see mother and two cubs. This was a spectacular moment. And in my best imagination, I could not even dream about one, but two of them together. But Yoni and Dani had a tremendous amount of responsibility, and they were not familiar with that. And they came really fabulous through it. However, it was the leadership of the Inuit, the confidence they brought in, Adam with his professionalism, and I had to be just myself to be able to pull and everybody together into that. So that was from my point of view.
Adam?
Yeah, for me, it's, I think what's interesting to people about the Arctic is, you book a holiday in Hawaii or wherever you want to go, and the hotel's all set up and the food will be there for you. And you get a taxi from the airport and it's all set up, and you can have a nice vacation. The Arctic is always, I remember the first time I went and I was about to go out on the land and I was expecting the food would already be taken care of. You have to plan every element of it out in advance. So for example, there was 4 of us, as Daniel likes to say, the 4 Jews, but you have to double that for there's going to be 4 more Inuit and possibly more. So then you have to take that number, let's say it's 8 people, and you have to now say, okay, morning, I got breakfast, lunch, dinner for 8 people times 5. And then you got to go in weeks in advance and start buying the food and getting that all together. You have to book the Inuit way in advance. You got to make sure that they have machines that work. And then in this case, we had to also have transportation. The Inuit were coming from another place by boat, and we were coming from another place by twin otter and helicopter and all kinds of different means of travel. So for me, the logistics of getting there, you're relieved when you can actually start working. But the setup, the logistics of putting it all together, there's no resort up there, so it's all from scratch.
Chris, what was your most difficult bit of making the music for this movie?
It was probably working with the time zone difference in Italy when we went out to do the final audio mix. I suppose that after all the talk about surviving in the Arctic, that doesn't sound very extreme, but that was that was my 4-day challenge. It was really a wonderful experience.
Right.
And the olive oil there, and you gain a lot of weight. We all gain a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Dani, last question for you. How long did it take to edit this feature?
It was also, it also took us a long time, and in the middle of our editing, Amos' father passed away, so we took that also as a completion to finish the film. And then, we got the feedback from, we had the screening with you, Ori, in Arizona, and we got the feedback. Nancy Stiller came to our edit room and gave us her notes, and we really wanted to feel that we're doing justice to the story that we want to tell, to all the layers. We knew that it's a complicated story, but we wanted to keep it as simple as possible. And my biggest surprise is that my 2 kids have watched the film and did not fall asleep and actually liked it. And the fact that I learned now that it's a movie for the whole family, I mean, that's one of the biggest gifts we could have ever imagined.
All right, Nancy, any final words about this movie? What was difficult? What was a moment of joy for you in it?
Well, I have terrible Jewish guilt right now because I'm so glad I didn't have to go to the Canadian Arctic. Oh, I literally watched then you guys inhale mosquitoes, and the bathroom situation and the cold. I was like, I really, to me, I feel like I don't even have a right to be on the same page with you guys because you are so brave. Always difficult to raise money. editing was tough. There was a lot of back and forth with notes, but really it was more of a pleasure for me. And again, I didn't have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So I should keep my mouth shut right now and be grateful that I was invited to this party. And what about you, Ori?
I will say this. I'm glad I didn't go. I'm not gonna lie. When I saw all these mosquitoes in the final cut, I'm like, oh my God, I wouldn't have survived the day there. But I think the most difficult moment for me is knowing that while you were there, we could not talk to you for 2 weeks because it took time to get there, be there, and come back. We didn't know if you got the shot. We didn't. It's not like dailies, in the movie studios that we can watch and say, we like, take it again, please, right? And because we love you, I can speak for myself. I feared for your life. I mean, this is not going to shoot birds in a park. This is going to shoot polar bears into the water. And as Adam says in the movie, humans are part of their food chain. So I will say those 2 weeks when you left and until you got back were hard, but hearing that you got the shot was a moment of joy, no doubt.
Ori, when we will do the narrative version for Picture of His Life, we will send you dailies.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. Hilary, I'm going to give you back the mic to wrap it up. And I want to thank everybody on this panel and over 100 people who showed up. Thank you so much. If you've seen the movie, that's great. And if you know somebody who hasn't yet, please go to pictureofhislife.com. You can make a donation there. And just watching it will allow Dani and the team to make more amazing movies. Hilary?
Yes, I want to thank you. You did a great job, Ori. And thank you so much to you guys for inviting us to participate and to host this panel. We've worked with Dani on many of his films over the years, and it was, I've gotten to know, some of you on the panel through the process. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. I want to thank all the partners from the other film festivals who've come on today. Thank you so much. It's great. We all work independently, or we have worked independently. But now times have changed, and I'm sure we'll all go back to theaters as soon as we can. But this is a whole new way of doing things. And in many ways, it's pretty extraordinary. I mean, we have, some of our people are here. Nancy's in New York, Ori's in Arizona. This is a new way of doing things, and it really gives an opportunity to have a much more inspiring panel discussion when we can sit and hear all of you discuss together and reminisce about the challenges and talk about future projects. And it's extraordinary. So I want to thank, all the partners for joining, and I want to thank all of you for making yourselves available today. And to all the people who have come on the call as viewers, thank you for your support. And, keep supporting our festivals and keep supporting our filmmakers. Right now, we need this more than ever, until the world can collectively figure out a solution and how to move forward and get back. And as Nancy says, get out there and hug each other. So right now, I just want to send to everybody a big virtual hug and a thank you. And if you haven't seen the film yet, make it a priority to see it. You will love it as much as we love listening to this panel. So thank you so much all for coming today.
Thank you.